Kumlan and Ablat Gemara. We are up to Daf Ayin Aleph Amad Aleph, and we're saying that all the psukim and everything is written there exactly in the correct order. There's one totally out of order, and that is the one to remove the ladle and remove the shovel from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And how do we know that it's out of order? And we push it off to a later activity because we needed to get an extra 2 tefillas and 4 times washing your hands. So therefore, after he does the activity of the ram and all that, he goes back in, he goes to the mikveh again, he changes clothes, he goes back to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, puts on the linen, and then he goes out of mikveh again, washes hands and everything else, changes clothes. So that's how we get the total number. Masker observed, Zayda said, 5 lines on top of Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. So Zayda asked, if you have to take something and put it in later to have an extra mikveh, why change the order of the psukim and say that even though the pasuk seems to be saying you remove the ladle and the shovel straight away? Let's masker say there's another goat that was made. That's not written in Parshas Achrei. That's written in Parshas Pinchas. So maybe that activity was done later. So you don't have to take any of the psukim out of whack. You can say that the pasuk in Parshas Pinchas talks about the soyer hachatas. That's the chatas. You have to change the clothes again and go back in and so on and so forth. Amar Abaye, So therefore, the ram and the ram of the nation, that all took place everything in the rate that takes place in the right time after you remove the shovel and after you remove the ladle, and only that later is what's in between. Says the Gemara, it says in Pasuk Yotzav Asa. It says in Pasuk the first time you should go out, and you should also make his oilosai is oila, and this is written before, and this had to be done before you remove the spoon and the ladle. It seems like it says the Yotzav Asa that he leaves and he did his oila. So it seems that he does his oila after the first leaving of the thing. So when the Torah says that you have to do something later, it must be another activity. That's how we know it's a ladle, and we have no choice but to learn to the kaf and the mach. Rabba says on Makra, he says, how do you know the cloud that you take this the kaf and mach, then you put it later? It says in Pasuk, not because of this gzedas hakosu that we have to have 5, this halacha machine, you have 5 mikvahs and all that. But I'll tell you, so the Pasuk itself. It says in the pasuk, "Uposhat as big day." The Aaron goes in the Elmaid. He removes his big day habod asher lovers that he put on when he went into the kodesh. So now this word that he put on is so obvious, it's so superfluous. Uposhat, you don't have to tell me that he put it on. Obviously, you can only take off what you put on. What do you take off? Only what you put on. Ella matam b'leiman ashalava. Shalava is kvar. This is the second. You already put it on one before, took it off. This is the second time you put on. So it's clear that you put it on the second time. And therefore, we have to say when you put it on when you walk into the Beis Hamikdash, into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So therefore, you must say that that this they chose kaf and machta. Masker Rabbi Shela be'ema. Maybe the mafseh is so nasa b'chutz. Maybe the hefsek is with certain nasa b'chutz, not the eila on, but the certain nasa b'chutz. That's what the hefsek is. And then you put it back on to do the eila and the eila on and all that. So therefore, you don't have to take the tzos kaf and machta and move that around. Oksiv the yotzav asa. It says in Pasuk the same the Bai said before. It says the yotzav asa sounds like it's the first time you were in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you went out, you did the eila and the eila on, not the second time. So you tell me the entire parsha is written in order. There are other psukim where it says it's also you have to do the haktorah on the mizbeach, and then it says that you have to go ahead and burn it outside of the camp, right? So these psukim are written right down there. Yet we learned that this burning takes place much later. How do you know it takes much later? We had in the Mishnah, it said you have a choice: kriyas hatayda or witness the burning of the kabbanis. And it says in the Mishnah, if you see the Kohen Gadol reading the parsha, is ein roye par v'soy, so you cannot see the par and the soy being burnt outside of the Beis Hamikdash, because both happening at the same time, concurrently. The ilu a muri chatz. And when did they roast the fats of the chatzas? Only basarachim maktalu was only afterwards. Everyone agrees that's only afterwards. You do this by the third tefillah, together with Eloi and Ela'am. Must be that, the other psukim are outside order. You're telling me that all the psukim are in order except Hitzos Kaf and Machta. No, the other psukim are out of order. For example, the Haktorah of the thing. And so where it says, the Elech. The posig where it says cover macht, and then from then onwards, the Torah is no longer makpid on the order. Says the Gemara, my chazed the mishabash v'kroy. So why you decide to know the psukim are not in order? Shabbos misnita, and why don't we say make a mistake and say that the sreifas are part and the soyat happened much later? It happened during Kriya, not in the beginning. Amar Abai says Amar Kro. It says in pasuk Amishaleach v'hasoidev. It says the pasuk. One pasuk says Hamishalech. When it comes to burning the soid, it says the word the hasoide. So we say as follows: Ma mishalech the mikor, because the hasoide sounds like exactly the same expression as the hamishalech, right? And the hasoide is talking about burning the pot and the soid, and they're both written after you take the chel of chatas and you burn them as beach. And surely the shaloyach hasoyah took place, hamashaleach took place before you roasted the fats on the mizbech. Because it says v'shilach hasoyah midbara, and then it says you should take the chayil chatas and burn it. And yet hamashaleach is written afterwards, and even though it's written afterwards, you say it happened before. So the same thing with hasoyah, even though it's written after the roasting of the chatas, this actually took place before. It's like we digressed and then we're coming back to the main subject. Same thing over here. The Avsaid is Mikara. It happened already before. That's how we know that the burning happened before. It happened during the Kriya, not after the third tefillah, by the third tefillah. So let's look at Ma'asayid of the Hasha. Maybe the burning is right now. Maybe that's in order. And after Shalet the Hasha Faket, maybe the Sayyid also now is in order. So even though what do you call it? Maybe it's Faket, yeah. So maybe that it says you should mishalech the soyed after the burning of Torah. Maybe it's after the burning of Torah. It says before shaliach hasoyed, before the burning of Torah. It's lav dafka. It means he'll send it out when the time comes, but the time is after the roasting of the Torah. I know which is the correct order. I said maybe the Torah is take the Torah literally. Rav the word v'hamishalech mikora mashba. The word v'hamishalech, the way it's written with the vav hamishalech, sounds like and that which we sent earlier. So in other words, just from the reading of the syntax of the Torah, it sounds like it already happened, not something that's going to happen right now. In other words, that which we talked about earlier, the mishalech. Let's get back to that. But when did you send it? You said before already. And once you know the mishalech means before, so hasoid also means it took place before you did the elah and the elah and not after, not after you did the Ketaitis. And Rabba says the pasuk, Ya Meichai. Rabba says that the shaliach soyer had to happen before, because the soyer had to be alive until the shas kapora. And must say till when does the soyer stay alive? At shas kapora till the sprinkle of blood. Maybe shas kapora, but shas matan dummy. It hadn't, it only had to be alive a long time ago, which means right after that he could have killed it. So obviously the Soyam Mishalech happened a long time ago, before the Haktorah Ketaitis. So therefore Hasoyim also took place before the Haktorah Ketaitis of the outer of the Soy in the park. The Mishalech, and no longer Mishalech comes, and so on and so forth. It says in the Mishnah more further. So what happens the following day after Yom Kippur? Remember that Isha Iti came back, rested up. Nobody saw him afterwards on Yom Kippur itself. The Kohen Gadol went to his house with his whole entourage. They had a Yom Tov. So when he met up with the Kohen Gadol the next day, this is what happened. His mentorkeit is correctness. Most of this. Let's say he found the Kohen Gadol out in the marketplace. The following day, the Kohen Gadol. He has to show him respect to the Ishi, my choshev a person, Kohen Gadol, Kohen Gadol. We carried out your mission exactly as you told him, Kippur, and that's it. So nobody's giving all the credit to the Kohen Gadol. But Matzah Beisa, if you found the Kohen Gadol in his house, him, he tells, no, it's in private. The Eibush one gives all the life. We did carry out his shlichus. Interesting. But when the Kohen Gadol is standing in front of his crowds, you give him all the recognition he deserves. Yeah, interesting idea. I always now say a similar thing like this. The rabbis would leave each other from Badisa. They would actually ask permission to leave their home. Just like Tfilah Saderech. You know, Tfilah Saderech, you ask neighbors, Shus, what's Tfilah Saderech? As most of Shayim hold, the others, Tfilah Saderech is not a bracha for safety. It's actually a bracha for the Shus. That's why once you left already, it's too late. What's the point? But if you hold for safety, whenever you remember, you do it. If you hold it's asking the shus. If you left already, you ask the shus once you left. It's like a patch upon him. It's even worse than not asking the shus. Yeah, talking about left means more than a parsa. More than a parsa outside the city. More than 4 meals.
Usually by the time you remember to say it.
Supposed to say it as you're leaving. So yeah.
So just as the plane takes off.
On the tarmac, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. So on the tarmac, I told you he's chutzli.
Last time I was in Israel, so I had a
Louder.
to the airport who's Shochat. His father's the Rosh Yeshiva in Los Angeles. He's a friend of mine from my yeshiva there. He came to Israel. Anyway, he said to me, when you go to the airport, he says, everyone makes a mistake. They wait until the airplane's taking off to Tzfil Saderech. You're already mechutz la'ir. You're on the highway. Say you Tzfil Saderech when you're on the highway on the way to the airport. You're going from
It's actually interesting because there's so many buildings around. It's actually interesting.
It's built up most of the way.
You're supposed to say it on the tarmac, so on the ground.
On the runway.
On the road. Tarmac. Yeah. So it means.
Taxi.
I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that Richard said that you should say it during the takeoff because it's a more dangerous time.
No, he says Lamaila Mitzvachim, you're not driving on the road anymore.
You're under shoes.
Right. It's a Shaila, there's Chumin Lamaila Mitzvachim, so it's not derech. It says derech. He says derech is only you're in the air.
As they say in parlance, nothing is sort of
Yeah, let's continue. So when they used to ask permission from their friends to leave town, Amri Hachi, they would say the following: the Ebesh, the one who gives all life, should give you Chayim Aruchim, the Taiv should give you a long life, good life, almost a konim, a fixed up life. Nice bracha, we should start doing that. It says the Apostle, David HaMelech said, he's asking the Ebesh as Halech Lifnei Hashem. I would like to walk before Hashem, but Arts of Chaim, the land of the living. What do you mean the end of the land of the living? There's a that's the marketplace. So Rashi learns the marketplace that's where food is always available. If you don't live with our markets, you can remember we learned before that you're always worried every morning where you're going to get bread from tomorrow. So you want to live in a place where there are plenty of bakeries and there's food available all the time. Others learn that in the Shvakim there are the Sienis, and you ask the neighbors to give me some of the Sienis so that I can overcome them. Then it says the Apostle, Ki Oidech Yamim, Shlomo said, Ki Oidech Yamim, long days, Shnois Chaim, and years of life, for Shalom, a peace, Sifalach, he will add to you. What do you mean years of life? And what other possible years are there? Years of not life. These are the years of a person that's transformed from bad to good. And let's say you were a poor person when you were young, and you become rich when you're older. So therefore, you feel like you just came to life. So give me Shnois Chaim, the years I had till now, Ayen 11. Give me years of life. And then the Torah says through learning Torah, giving Torah makes you rich, and so on and so forth. Then let's an apostle Mishnah again. Aleichem Ishim Ekra, I will call you. Now normally Ishim is people, but if it's a plural of men, it should say Anoshim. What kind of word is Ishim? Yeah, but over here, what does it mean? It means Ishim, it means Chashva people. Talking about he's giving a bracha, Shnois Chaim, and all those things. And then he says, it's continuation. And then he says over there, or later on, he says that Aleichem Ishim Ekra v'koili el bnei adam. I'm listening to the people. Oh, Ishim is like a half man, half woman. Isha, and Im is Rosh Hashanah. So what does that mean? This is where it all started, the non-gender. They're like women, they're like men. Why are they that way?
He said,
well, I'll explain you. Why are they like Nashim? So Rashi said, because they're humble. They're much more meek and humble like women are. And they're like men because they have the strength to overcome, to conquer the Yetzer Hara, because they have big understandings that women do, so they have to deal with the Yetzer Hara. So they have the anivus of a woman, and that's just also Trushikayach, and they have the strength of men as well to overcome the Yetzer Haras. That's what it means. The Bracha said, it's interesting, Maila, that Nashim have anivus more than men do. More able. Yeah. If you want to be as if you're pouring wine in his bayach, what you do, you should fill the throats of Tamil with yain, wine. Doesn't mean literally means give them panos Hashem. It says aleichem ishim ekra, because it says in this passage what you said. Ishim also means fire and everything else. So ishim is from isherei v'charech Hashem. So you want to have nitzach hayayin on the mizbeach. Give them panos. If a person sees that his children are going off the derech, Yisa bas tamachach. Machlek is mafashim whether he should marry another woman, a bas tamachach, and bring Torah into his house. Maybe the son is that you yourself are not a role model of learning Torah with your kids and everything else. So make sure you bring another woman into the house who's a bas tamachach, appreciates learning and brings Torah into the house, and it's never too late. Or make sure your son, even though he's going with the derech, marries a woman, a daughter of a talmid chacham. Not so much that she herself, but she's a daughter of a talmid chacham. Ultimately, over time, learning becomes important. Shenema, it says in Pasuk, "Im yaskin ba'aretz," if he ages in the land, charge the roots. For yom gizay and the branches die. He's meriach mayim, meriach mayim from the smell of mayim. Mayim yefrach. You will start blossoming. But also katzer k'may nata, and then you will start planting up things. In other words, through Torah mayim, if your roots and everything else are no good. So in other words, we're saying it clear. If your kids go for that, if the problem is with the roots. Why are the branches falling off? Because the roots are not stuff, so that's the way it should be. What you have to do is bring mayim in. Why did we say to the father himself, let's start learning Torah yourself and become a role model? I guess he needs more than just a father. You need a mother as well. Team effort. Sorry?
The father should have started a few years earlier.
True, but we're talking about now is the chapter that he went too far. The Yom Tov he made a Yom Tov for his Kohen Gadol, make a Yom Tov from Kippur. Tell him I learned. Ma'isa big Kohen Gadol echad. There's a story of the Kohen Gadol. She yotzim the base of Mikdash. I left the base of Mikdash. And he had his whole entourage following him. Even the Chazul Ishwamai battalion. When the people who saw were walking with Kohen Gadol's accordion saw Shmai battalion, the Av Bezin and the Nasi at that time. Shavkul is there. They all walked away from the Kohen Gadol. The Azli Basa Shmai battalion. They all went and followed Shmai battalion. L'Soiv, but then the Kohen Gadol was totally belated. He was insulted. L'Soiv later on, also Shmai battalion to pay respect to him in the Kohen Gadol. They were walking together, but then were diverging, so they turned to the Kohen Gadol to say goodbye. So the Kohen Gadol was bitter. He said, "Yesen b'nei Amamin l'Shalom." The people of the nations are coming to say hello. Now, there's two ways of learning Pshat. Either he was just saying, you're like everybody else, you're part of Bnei Yisrael, or you're saying you're part of Bnei Yisrael, you're not such a great guy, you're Sam, or you're saying you guys come from Gerim, because they come from Sancherev, ultimately, right? They come from Sancherev. They come from Gerim. So he was insulted. He insulted them. You guys are, my yichus, I come out on a koyin. You have no yichus, and they're going to use that me. So they said to him very sharp. Yesen b'nei Amin l'shalom. Yes, let the b'nei Amin come and wish you respect. The Avdin Uvda the Adam, because they behave like Adam. They try to make shalom regardless, knowing how your antipathy towards us. Well, Yesei bar Adam, and let not the children of Adam, if yichas l'shalom, to say hello, Avdin Uvda Adam, then behave like Adam. Which makes it worse. If you come from Adam, you don't behave like Adam. It's much worse than we who don't. We come from Sancherev, but we behave like Adam.
It's Motzim Kippur.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm saying, when did he make the Shem?
Mitzrayim Kippur. And that's what Shlomo says that Mitzrayim Kippur is Tzas Yom Tov. Also, which could Yom Tov? Said the Mishnah further. Okay, now we're going to talk about the clothes. The Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol wore 8 different vestments. The hedging with above. For the Kohen is that's a long shirt that goes all the way to the ground. There's no Chilik Kohen Gadol, Kohen Hedged, and the pants is no Chilik Kohen Gadol, Kohen Hedged. Mitznefis, and we had a machlekes in the place before. Remember we talked about the river, whether Mitznefis and Mikbas is exactly the same thing or not, because it could be the Kohen Gadol. His was narrower because he had to wear tzitz in between, in addition to the tefillin, the avnet and the gartel. And we had a machlekes whether the gartel Kohen Gadol wore was the same as the gartel that Kohen Hedged wore, because the Kohen Gadol's gartel was klein. 30 arms long, it was klein, whether the Kohen had the same thing. They both have that in common. Moisiv Olav Kohen Gadol. What does the Kohen Gadol wear that others don't? Choshen, he wears a Choshen mishpat, and the Shkurim and Tumim, which is inside it. Umiil, he wears that Tumiil, the robe, the tzitz, and the tzitz, and be'eh, so the Choshen, ephod is the apron. In fact, actually says he's they're like riding a horse, woman riding a horse, and the Me'il and the tzitz. Be'elu nishalim bu'urim v'tumim. When he wears all of these clothes, that's when you ask the Urim Tumim, the current around the room Tumim, and ask his questions. And the Ein Yisholem El Lamelech, he only asks on behalf of a king, Ula Bezin on behalf of the Bezin, and Ulamisha Hatzibur Tzarech, or any other leader that the Tzibur in the place stated as a leader. Those are the kind of questions, things that Tzarech Am. The Novi is not by the Tzibur. That was by the Eibishter. Tzibur might be an Ab Bezdin or other Chashva positions. We'll see the Gemara later. About the Overton.
Not according to how because the first thing you put around the foot is the heel.
Yeah.
And after you got the A-frame.
The order, yeah. All those things. The word sheish can have two definitions. Either sheish can be linen, or sheish can be six strings intertwined. So it says the Gemara, we learned Dvadi should have a been sheish. All those things that the word sheish in them is chut and couple shisha. There were 6 strings. Mizza, Majza, when it says Majza, that's Shemaina. Majza means 8 strings intertwined. And Me'il is Shnema, so 12 strings intertwined. Paroiche, so the meal we'll see will be 12. Because it says that twice the word sheish, so therefore 2 times 6 is 12. The paroiches we'll see later is 4 times, so it's 4 times 24. Choishin and the Ephod, but the Choishin and the Ephod, they were Esim B'Shmeina. They were actually 28. Chutun Kafel Shishim and how do you know that every time the threads were intertwined in string of 6? There were 4 minin by the. There were 4 minin. Each one is 6. That's how we get to 24. But how do you know? No, across in the pasuk, it says in the pasuk as follows. So Yasu is akusana. You should make the kusana sheish. It says 1 sheish, and then it says. Then it says Nefes, and the mitzlef is the hat sheish. There's party and mikbas sheish, and mikbas again it says, which is we're going to go with the hat, is sheish, and this michzibat sheish says 4 times in the pasuk sheish. So therefore, it's 4 times 6 is 24. What do you call Majzar? Then it says Majzar. It's Chamisha Kroik. It says 5 times the word sheish. So why do we say 5 times the word sheish? Tell you this, the kiss and the have first of all, one of them need push for itself, that has to be exciting. Sheish. One that should be 6 times. That is not only a couple of shisha, but should actually be intertwined. And and one all other clothing in the base of English in the Mishkan should also be intertwined in 6 threads. Never been shesh. And the 5th one is le'ake. We need one more because when we learn by kachim, it's always mitzvah. Only if it says double, it says le'ake. My mashma the high shesh kisnu. What do you mean that the word shesh is kisnu? Interesting question, because how do you know every word will tell you what it means? Remember when we had Gemara Shabbos, where Hillel said to this guy, the guy said, how do you know the Chacham is incorrect? So he first told him Aleph Beis Gimel, then he said the same letters. He told him Gil Beis Aleph. So what are you doing? How do you know if that's Aleph Beis Gimel? Because I told you. So you have to listen to the Chacham. Same thing here. Every word in the Torah, how do we know what it means? Because that's the Taich the Messiah. So what are you asking? How do we know the word sheish means linen? But anyway, how do we know it means linen? Bad. It says in the pasuk bad. So what? Of course, it says the word bad. What does bad mean? Bad means alone. It grows each one on a separate stalk. They all grow on their own. All grow on their own. So that's how we know. Sheish and bad is the same thing.
Same. How do you? You can ask the same question. How do you know? He's asking how do you know, and he just
so we
word.
Say the word bad in the pasuk. It says michnesei bad yob sorry. So and we know the michnesayim was made out of sheish. The other pasuk says michnesayim is sheish. So therefore, we know that it says michnesei bad. Oh, right here. It's michnesei bad sheish majzor. So it calls it bad right in the first pasuk. So we know it says sheish and describes it as bad. So it grows each individual stalk. The aim amra, maybe it's wool. Each hair grows on its own as well. So maybe bad means it should be wool. Sheish means wool. Amra ivtuli mitzvah. That wool it falls apart. Wool breaks apart. But you might kiss na mitzvah mitzvah. Linen also can be broken apart. Kisna agav the kusi mitzvah. Linen doesn't break apart on its own. You have to hit it. When you hit it, and that's how you scrub everything else. That's how you break it. It doesn't break by itself. Wool on the other hand unravels by itself. Yeah. Ravina said, from here, I'll tell you how I know that what sheish means. He says, Pare Pishtim, you are have these hats made out of linen on the heads. And then it says, a michnas I Pishtim Yil must name, and pants made out of linen should be on their loins. And we know pants are made out of sheish, so therefore we know it's one of the same. Says the Gemara. So where does it say this pasuk? This pasuk is written by Yecheskel. The same question we had in Martinus. So you're telling me there's a pasuk in Yecheskel that reveals to us that you know what it means when it says sheish, it means linen. So let me ask you a question. Until Yecheskel came around, at the very end of the first base of Midrash, how did they know what to do? So the Gemara says, and according to you, this is what Rav Chizda said. This from Teiras Moshe Rabbeinu lo lamadu. We don't know. We only know from Yecheskel that is called Ben Nechar. It says in the pasuk in Yecheskel that anyone is a Ben Nechar aral lev rabasa layovel mikdash. I know that a Ben Nechar, that he's somebody who is shmatzich against the Eibishter, so he's aral lev. Or somebody that doesn't have a bris milah, even if it's not his fault, that his brother is a hemophiliac, his brother's died from bris milah. How do we know they're not allowed to enter the Beis Hamikdash? It's because it says Yecheskel not allowed to. Nu hamakam of Yecheskel man amram before Yecheskel. How do they know? Elo navas gemara gemilah. It's a halacha Moshe Sinai, but also Yecheskel was happening. Yecheskel came and put in a pasuk. Achanamik gemara gemilah Yecheskel happening. So over here also, it's a tradition, and Yecheskel put in a pasuk. Says the Gemara, Morzar Shmeina Minola. How do we know? Okay, you said before Sheish is 6. The word sheish itself means 6. The Haina Moshe means 8 threads intertwined. It says in Pasuk, Yasu al Shuli Ami'il, they made on the end of the Me'il. What do they have in the bottom of that long rope? They have these bells. They made bells of Cheles, Agama, Mishla, Shani, Moshe. So there are 3 different kinds of string, and so on. We learn how Marsa Meparech, and we learn how Marsa from the Parechis. One second, so therefore, I know it's 8 strings. Could we learn out? It says Marsa over here, and it says Marsa by the Parechis as well. You should make the Sheish Marsa Tash Oisai. Malahala, and we know. How do we know? And by the parechis, we know S above 24 because there's 4 different kinds of material they use by parechis. And we said before the rule was each one is 6. So 4 times 6 is 24. And then we're learning that the me'il also says marzar, the remainder is marzar, and so it's the same word that says by the parechis. So we know the 24 strings as well. But there are only 3 minimum. So what's 24 divided by 3? 8. That's how we know that marzar means 8. Each one is 8. Why do we learn from the Choshen Eishrei? It says there, the word Marza as well. Malahan Esim B'Shmoina, Afkan Esim B'Shmoina, and over there is 28. Over here also should be 28. Doni, we learn out. We said before on top of the page that the Choshen Eishrei was Esim B'Shmoina. So the Chayda, maybe we should learn out Marsa from, because it's the same word Marsa by Choshen Mishpah. That should be 28 over the same over there. Donin Dova Shalaynema by Zov. By Choshen Mishpah it says Kemaisa Eifel Seno Zov Chelis Bagov. It says Zov. So we don't want to learn from there because the Chayla they don't have Zov. They don't have Chelis Nagama Tlashani. It didn't have Zov. So we'd rather learn from the Parechas that also didn't have Zov. So Donin Dova Shalaynema by Zov. One of the threads were not made out of gold. With Dova Shalaynema by Zov. With Parechas we don't have any gold. Lafuke Choshen ve'Eifel Shenema behen Zov. Zov is included. So they're not similar. So let's learn from the Choshen ve'Eifel. Donin Beged beBeged. The Choshen was something that he wore as a vestment, and the Me'il was something he wore as a vestment. Versus the Parechas, which is hanging there by the Beis Hamikdash. Lafuke Parechas the oilu. It was the top of it was bent over like an oil, like a roof. We compare the meal to the gartel, another one of the vestments, which was 24. Could have 4 million. And here there were 3 million, so there were 24 as well. Must be 8. The done in Beged, the dover. Here you have 2 things that are similar. The gartel was one of the vestments, and it doesn't have the word gold. And over here also, the meal was one of the vestments, doesn't have the word gold. Beged, the dover, and therefore, just like if there's 24 strings over here, 24. Even though over there were 4 million, here were 3 million. That's how we know that. It says here describes Moshe, it means 8. The ain't doni dovish ain't by zav, but we don't learn from the Choshen Mishpah it says the word zav, and the meal doesn't have zav. Rav Mori says, it says in the pasuk, Ta'asenu ksiv. You know why we don't learn from Choshen Mishpat? It says the pasuk you should make the Choshen Mishpat. Kemasa efay ta'asenu. You should make a ksiv. Ta'asenu is like a miyut. This should be made this way. This should be made this way and nothing else. In other words, you want to learn from there that it was 28 strings, right? We said before the Choshen had 28 strings. No, this was unique that it had 28 strings. You can't learn anything else from there. Rav Ashi says, it says the pasuk, Vasisa, you should make under the Mainit Chev Vagomen. It says Vasisa. What do you mean Vasisa? It means she Kolasiyasa Shava. That all the strings that you use, the three different kinds, different colors, the Agama to Lashoni, should all be the equal amounts. Now, if you had the number 28, 28 is not divisible by 3. You have the number 24, it's divisible by 3. That's how we know we cannot live with the Cheshin Deifel. The Hechinah, what should we do? Navit plus a dasod, if you make all 310, asada havalu, then it'll be, 3 times 10 is 30. It's lost, it'll be total 30. Navit today, the Tisha, if you make 2 9 and then 110, so therefore you have 28. Tisha v'chadas or amakrav sisa sheikol asiyah sheshok will be the same. Therefore, we have no bread. That's how we know that all 3 is 24 total. Let's say we know Muslim means 8 strings.
Why do we focus on the side with the other instructor?
We can go through every one of them. We're not teaching the shot right now.
No. But I'm saying, why don't you say the fish and the what's the name of the chapters?
He does have shot.
Yeah, no,
we mentioned
when we
before.
talk, when we call so we focus.
No, because that's not something similar with the Kohen Hegel. The Kohen Gadol has his claim Zainzach.
No,
They're both going to Gardful. Yeah, what's the story? Yeah, but the first 4 clothes are going the same. Me'il Shnei Masa Minola, and how do you know the me'il is made up of 12? See, it says, well, Sisas Me'ila Eifa, you should make the Me'ila Eifa, Kolil Cheles, and Gedil is already, each thread was intertwined already itself, and then you only had 1 min over there. They said each min is 6, so 6 times 2 is 12. Cheles, but Yalot Cheles, Malhala Shisha, like it is 6, Afkan Shisha. Each said 6, but each one's a Gedil. So each one already is intertwined into 2. Benela, why do you learn Meshula with a minor? Why do you learn from Meshula with a minor before it's 24? Malahala Shemaina, and then we said Mosh Zor. We said over there is 24 because with 3 different ones and each one was 8. Avkan Shemaina 8. Done in Kayli Mekayli. We learn out 1 Kayli Me'il. Me'il. We learn out from what do you call? From the Paroiche, ain't done in Kayli Metach. The Me'il, or when we talk about the Me'il, we're talking about over there. So what do you mean?
Reminding is the Tachshit, no?
It's a Tachshit.
Yeah. So you want to learn from the remaining. So the remaining is a Tachshit. And we don't learn from a Tachshit. Afkash, when done in Kayli, ain't done in Kayli Metach. We don't want to learn from the bells that are hanging on the bottom.
That's the Tachshit.
Yeah, Metach. Adrabah, why don't you learn done in Gufa and Gufa? Why don't you learn from itself? Because the remaining are hanging on the bottom of the meal. They ain't done in Gufa Ma'alma. Don't learn for something else altogether. That's what we say, that's why we said before in the Braisa, all the other clothes where it doesn't say sheish, we automatically, because it's an extra sheish in the Torah, it tells you that all the clothing, the vestments, if it doesn't say describe to you otherwise, like mashdar, we know it's 6, whatever sheish. Therefore, we know it means 6. Okay, we'll stop there and continue to go through all those things, how many strings each one is.